Welcome back to Got No Control podcast. I am your host, Ronek. And before I introduce my special guest today, I want to give a shout out to our sponsors that help these episodes be possible. 360 Spray Paint. 360 Spray Paint is a spray paint company that is manufactured and distributed out of Mexico, and they aim to offer high quality spray paint to all spray paint enthusiasts. So make sure to check them out at 360 California at 360 Spray Paint. Looking to print stickers or have a graphic and want it on a sticker? Look no further. StickerLA.com got you covered. They offer high quality stickers and so much more. So make sure to check them out at StickerLA.com and take advantage of code Got No Control to receive 15% off your next order. This does not include any promo deals. So check them out. And with that being said, I'm excited to introduce my guest today because I met him when I barely started podcasting. I was out of my truck, and I'm finally here with him. Nyse. How you doing, brother?
Hey, man. Good. How are you?
It's a long time coming, but we're here.
Great to see you and be sitting here in person.
A lot of people may not know, but you were one of the very first people that I interviewed when I got into podcasting. So it's a pleasure to have you here. And let's jump right into this, brother.
Let's go.
For those who don't know who Nyse is, can you speak a little bit about what is home for you and how was it coming up in your environment?
Yeah. You'll have to read the book on the whole story.
Yeah.
But, basically, I started painting graffiti in 1984.
Okay.
And I started in the Valley. I grew up in Woodland Hills.
Okay.
And back then, there was really not very much graffiti in the Valley.
Okay.
There were very few writers, and I didn't know anybody. So I got my lessons from two things. One was a trip to New York.
Yeah.
Where my grandmother lived across the street from Riverside Park, where some of the most famous pieces were painted at that time. And again, I didn't really know what I was looking at.
Yeah.
But it really inspired me. The next thing was my mom bought me the spray can art book, or not spray can art, the Subway art book.
Oh, Subway art. Okay.
And so I just started doing graffiti, man. And my first place that I painted real pieces was at, it used to be called Sutter Junior High School.
Sutter?
Yeah, it's in the Valley, but they closed it.
Okay.
And after they closed it, they pulled all the outdoor lockers out.
Yeah.
And it made these perfectly framed areas for doing pieces.
Nice.
They were big. They were like 30 feet long and like 8 feet high or something.
Okay.
And so I started painting there. And I didn't know anything. I didn't know the caps. I didn't know anything. I would just go rack spray paint.
Try and error.
And, I would make up my lettering, usually based on something I saw done by Dondi or Scene or somebody. I would use them as my inspirations, and I just started painting. And I didn't know anybody. And then, slowly you start seeing other people up.
Okay.
You start seeing there were some yards in the Valley.
Yeah.
And back then, the first name I wrote was Ozone.
Ozone.
And I basically decided on that name by 1985, 86.
So you had the support of your family from the jump.
Well,
She bought the book for you. Would you consider that support or no?
Strangely enough, my mom was supportive of my artistic nature, but she didn't know what I was up to.
Okay.
Because I was skateboarding all over the Valley, and she didn't know I had the spray paint can with me so much.
And just for a little clarification, the Valley, what does the Valley consist of? Like how many parts are in the Valley?
Oh man. I couldn't name all the cities in the Valley, but I mean it goes all the way, I think, from Pacoima all the way to Calabasas, right?
Okay.
But I was mostly in the West Valley.
Okay.
Because that time I didn't have a car.
Okay.
And I'd skateboard around and I'd tag and stuff. But really, there were no known riders in that end of the Valley. The ones that you would see mostly were on the buses, like Slim and Snap, like UTI guys.
Okay.
Because they were hitting the buses a lot. And the first time I ever met a rider was actually in front of Crespi High School, I think in Sherman Oaks or something.
Okay.
Right? And that rider was Rage.
Okay.
And Rage from KSN.
And just taking a small step back before we move forward.
Yeah.
So for your early stages, right? Your mother buys you Subway art.
Yeah.
But is that the very first beginnings of you igniting, being creative, like picking up a pencil and sketching, or was it something else prior to that?
That's a good question. I'd always been an artist in school. Although, my earliest obsession with letters, I actually remember very well. It was second grade.
Okay.
And in second grade, we would go to lunch.
Yeah.
I was at Oso Elementary School, which is also gone now.
Okay.
And we would go to lunch, and there was a sign on the table for what classroom you were from.
Yeah.
And I would obsess about making those signs for my classroom.
Okay.
And I would do them over and over and over. I bet if I had a collection, I could do like a coffee table book of classroom 6 signs. Yeah. Seriously, like I was obsessed with it. But again, like graffiti wasn't even in my vernacular at that time. I didn't even know what it was. And so that trip to New York, seeing some of the graffiti along the LA River, because I would take a train to San Diego to visit my father. Okay. And so I'd see there was like Dogtown stuff. Okay. Not the skate crew, like Dogtown. I think it was a Chicano gang in East LA. And I would see it and I would try and emulate it. Yeah. So all these things kind of came together. And all of a sudden, I decided I wanted to like be the king, you know? Yeah. I was like, I want to be king, right? Yeah. So I just started going on these mad tagging sprees. And
I know you mentioned trip to New York. You took a trip to New York as a young child?
Yeah, I was like 13 years old.
Okay. And was there a reason behind that, or were you going for a graph?
Well, my grandmother was there.
Okay.
So like we went to visit grandma, but she lived across the street from Riverside Park where there was so much graffiti. So I would go on these walks with my grandfather and I saw all this art and I was like blown away.
In New York?
Yeah, because I'd never seen anything like it anywhere in Los Angeles, you know? As it turns out, there was some. I just, you know, I mean, when you were a kid, you rarely left your general area. Yeah, yeah. You know, you didn't have transportation and things were expensive if you didn't have a job.
On the trips to New York to visit your grandparents, right?
Yeah.
Did you ever encounter a writer out there while you were there at that age?
I remember seeing guys painting at one point. Okay. But, you know, they were adults to me. They looked like they were these big dudes. They were these black guys. I was like, I don't know what's going on. But I was a little kid really mesmerized by the whole idea of it.
Like the color schemes, the characters.
Yeah, I couldn't really believe what I was seeing.
And you obtained the Subway art book while in New York?
No, I think my mom bought me that after she saw how interested I was. Yeah. Because then I would sit home and I would sketch letters and I would, you know, again, I had no idea what I was doing. And I went through all these different names. Okay. And like the first tag I ever did with spray paint was Stingray.
Stingray.
Like the S crossed the T. I could probably do the tag if I tried again. Yeah. I tagged it at my junior high, like in the cafeteria. Okay. And it ran for like 2 weeks. And I didn't tell anybody, but everyone was like, oh, who did that? Right? Yeah. So that's when I started getting that sort of feedback that was feeding that fire to
keep going.
Yeah, totally.
So you're introducing yourself to the art form, right?
Yes.
At any point, do you come along another friend that kind of wants to be part of the same thing that you're doing?
So a few of my friends painted 1 or 2 pieces when I started going to some of the, you know, the washes and stuff in my part of the valley. And there was one guy I knew that was from a crew called TCF.
TCF.
And that was the first rendition of TCF was actually 2CF.
2CF.
And it stood for 2 Claim Fame. As in 2 artists claim fame. Okay. And that crew was started by Rage and Wise. Okay. Who both went on to become members of KSN. Okay. And the way Wise tells it is the reason they named it 2CF is they were trying to claim fame so they could get the attention of some of the crews in LA, West Coast, KSN, because that's really what they wanted to be a part of. Okay. But pretty soon, TCF grew from more than 2 people. I think the third member was Crush. And then by the time I joined in 1988, there were probably like 20 members of TCF.
And how old were you at this point when you joined?
When I joined TCF, at that point, I'd gone through my ozone phase. Yeah. And I had to leave that name behind because I got too much notoriety for it. Okay. So I chose my next name, which was Nyse. And there was a reason for that too. But I basically did a piece to get into TCF in 1988. Okay. At a yard called Hank's Tires.
Hank's Tires.
Faced the 101 freeway right off of Winnetka.
And is it fair to say that 2CF was a Valley crew?
It was a Valley crew, definitely. And it started to grow. You know, a few guys from like Newbury Park, I think, maybe Calabasas. But it was definitely a Valley crew, one of the earliest Valley crews.
Coming from Woodland Hills, right?
Yeah.
Can you speak a little bit about the knowledge that you have as far as how was people taking the graffiti entering that area? Was it kind of like, hey, what are you doing type thing, or were they absorbing it? And
they did not like it at all.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, they were very adamantly opposed to any kind of graffiti. In fact, in 1988, I got permission to paint the side of this liquor store on Corbin and Ventura Boulevard.
Okay.
It might be the first graffiti that was ever painted on Ventura Boulevard that we had permission for.
Okay.
And I did this piece that said clean, and it said keep the city clean. And I literally walked across the street with my camera, took a picture. By the time I advanced the film to the second picture, the police buff wagon was already in front of the piece.
Oh, wow.
And they threatened the owners of the building and the owners of the liquor store. And within 3 hours, it was gone.
And you did a nice piece, or
no? It said clean.
Oh, clean.
But it was like in this style that was like clearly inspired by Rise from KSN. He was like my idol at the time, and this looked kind of like a Rise piece. Probably a little too close to Rise, but I was young.
You're learning.
Yeah. But it was a beautiful piece, man, and it was big, but it was buffed right after we finished it.
I know you said that Rice was kind of like someone you kind of looked up as far as style. Yes. But is there anybody prior to him that kind of inspired you style-wise?
I would say some of the guys I saw like in spray can art inspired me. I really liked Reese.
Reese?
Okay. Because like just the letter styles.
Yeah.
There were a few other guys. Once spray can art came out, I think in '86 or something. Some of those guys from like Paris were really inspiring, and that guy Shu, there were a number of writers who I really respected, and of course Risk, and Charlie in Los Angeles. You would see their pieces, and they just had this perfect balance to them, and these incredible color schemes, and this incredible can control, and you can't beat it. So there were a lot of inspirations, but I think those are some of the bigger ones that sort of.
And I know you also mentioned going from Woodland Hills to San Diego to visit your father and witnessing gang-style graffiti by possibly Dogtown.
Yes, definitely. I remember specifically.
Dogtown.
Yes.
Which is a Chicano gang.
Right.
Back home in Woodland Hills or anywhere in the valley, were you also witnessing that as well? Or was it just on the way to San Diego?
Not really.
No?
You had to, I mean, as you drove, I guess, east in the valley, as you drove towards the east and you came closer to North Hollywood, sort of that interface with LA, you would start seeing a little more street graffiti.
Okay.
But there wasn't much gang graffiti in the valley.
Okay.
I mean, I grew up with a cornfield across the street from my house on DeSoto.
Oh,
now it's like the Kaiser Permanente, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, we used to play in the fields and ride our bikes. I mean, it was a different world, bro.
Life before the internet.
Life before the internet, life before Warner Center. Warner Center was just fields.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So it was different. And it was considered like really, I think, suburbia.
Yeah.
So like graffiti was not something that they wanted anywhere in that part of the city. As far as they were concerned, that graffiti meant gangs and violence and drugs and crime, and like they weren't having it. Okay.
And not to dive too deep into it, but I kind of want to touch on the subject a bit. You say you were skating as a child.
Yes.
What do you think sparked that interest in skating, and that you take it very seriously, or was it kind of just to get around?
I was a really serious street skater.
Okay.
I was never that great.
Okay.
But I tried really hard. I mean, we would leave the valley, during the summer, we're off school. My friend and I at 12, 13 years old, we would go to skate at Parkman Junior High School because there were some banks there.
Yeah.
But we would skate from there down to the Galleria.
Okay.
And we would take a RTD bus to UCLA.
Yeah.
And then we would skate from UCLA down to Venice.
Oh, you guys really...
Yeah, we would hang out with all the Santa Monica Airlines guys and they would force us to smoke weed and try stupid tricks that would just hurt us. And then we would head back to the valley, and none of our parents ever even knew we were gone. So
it was just a different time.
Oh man, yeah, it was a different time.
And not to dive too deep into it, but can you kind of mention some of the skaters that you kind of were like, damn, those guys are cool?
Well, we would see like Christian Hosoi and Jesse Martinez, and even like guys like Lance Mountain, but a lot of those like Nodis, like those guys that would skate in Venice. I mean, when the pavilion was there, it was also this sort of hub of skateboarding. Yeah. So we ended up meeting quite a few pros down there.
Oh, wow.
And we were like little kids. They were like rock stars to us,
Yeah.
And again, come to think of it, a lot of those walls were covered with graffiti back at the time too. But I nothing there ever stood out to me as something that I like really remember.
To be like, oh wow, yeah.
Not in 82, 83, but I remember seeing a Risk piece over there, and I think a Suze or somebody. So every once in a while there'd be a piece that would really spark my imagination. And actually, just on that note, one of the turning points was on one of those trips to San Diego.
Okay.
Walking down Union Station, there's all these tunnels going.
Yeah.
And there's railing going up each tunnel. And on the railing, I saw these wide marker tags, and it was like Risk, PJ, Dante.
Okay.
And like, that was the first time I ever saw tags other than like sort of the gang style, right?
Yeah.
And I was blown away by it. I didn't even know what to think. First of all, it's like, where do you get a marker that big, right?
Yeah.
They probably made it. It's like a Uni 2000 or something, but I will never forget those tags as long as I live. That was like turning point. I was probably 12 or 13.
That's the first time when you're like, all right, I gotta get nice like this.
Yeah, I just couldn't believe what I was seeing. Who did this? They did it everywhere. Like,
Many people today won't understand what the pavilion meant to the graffiti culture in the early stages. Can you talk a little bit about the vibe there, and just witnessing it being alive? Because as we know it now, it's not there.
Yeah. It'd be nice to change that, wouldn't it?
Yeah, it would definitely will.
I mean, why don't they take it out of the sand and turn it into a graffiti park? Wouldn't that be?
That'd be awesome.
That's the obvious, right?
Yeah.
It was definitely one of the hubs. I mean, there was the Pan Pacific before that, right? That was a little bit before my time. By the time I started going to LA regularly to paint, we would paint Motor Yard mostly and at the Pavilion.
Okay.
From my perspective, I moved to San Diego in 1990. So I quit painting. When I started coming back to the Pavilion, that was when it meant the most to me. In like 93, 94, 95.
Yeah.
That's when I was really sort of coming up to LA on a regular basis to hang out with my crew, and we would all paint together.
Yeah.
And I think like some really groundbreaking graffiti happened at that spot during those years.
Okay.
In the early 90s, early to mid 90s.
Being from the Valley, right? What would you say is what led you to start traveling to LA?
Well, I met Wise from KSN.
Okay.
And he started kind of schooling me about like what the crews were, where the yards were. He was just kind of giving me a little insight.
Yeah.
I'll never forget, he like handed me this cap, and it was like a tester's cap.
Yeah.
It was like a dot arrow. And it was like a softball. Well, not a softball. It was like a thin tip, right?
Yeah.
Like an outline cap. And it blew my mind. Because like before that, I'd been using just the regular tips that came on Krylon, right?
Okay.
So, like things like that, we all discovered on our own, right? And so Wise introduced me to that, and he showed me some sketches in his books, and I was like blown away, like some of the KSN guys.
Okay.
And that really made me realize there already was a graffiti culture in LA. And at this point, I just wasn't a part of it.
And at this point, you're already 2CF.
No, this is before that.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, this was like on the rise. I was still ozone at that point.
Okay.
Yeah, so it was, that's when I was like, I need to go see this. I need to go to Belmont. I need to go to Motor. I need to I need to meet these other artists. Yeah.
And you need to witness it and breathe it and leave it.
Well, and see like if what I've been doing is in any way related to what they've been doing for several years already.
Can you speak a little bit about your first interactions with LA writers, like your very first LA writers that you kind of like met? Like, hey, I'm from the Valley. Oh, I'm from over here.
It was probably a Motor Yard.
Motor Yard.
Yeah. I actually met Eclipse.
Shout out Eclipse.
And a few of the original members of AWR.
Okay.
Meet guys like Dream or Green or those guys would be down there. I mean, again, like I was a small little kid. Those guys all scared me kind of.
Oh, they were all older than you?
A little bit older,
okay.
A few years maybe.
Okay.
And so that's really where I started making connections down there. I met like Axis, and I met Chaos, and we started like growing our crew.
Yeah.
And, some of those people actually joined TCF. And it was definitely Motor was like where I started like connecting Motor and also the West Coast tracks like on Sepulveda.
Okay.
Yeah. So you would run into writers down there and like everyone was relatively cool.
Nice. Was there ever a friendly rivalry kind of like, hey, I'm from the Valley. Oh, I'm from LA?
Back then, like, I think they thought of the Valley the same way that surfers in Malibu thought of surfers from the Valley. They just thought they were kooks. They didn't even think, they were nice enough, but I don't think they were really giving us a lot of credit.
Okay.
But then, of course, we started painting at those yards.
Yeah.
And that kind of changed the game a little bit, I think.
And did you ever bring them back to the Valley? Like, hey, I got a spot over here. You guys want to hit it or no?
Some of the guys from the Valley that were in KSN did bring riders to the Valley. Like, there was a really killer yard on Reseda.
Okay.
And like, so KSN painted that yard. And then there was obviously the Woodman yard in North Hollywood was very active.
Okay.
And I would say that was one of those yards that was like a transitional point where riders from LA, from the city would come, and also riders from the Valley would come.
Yeah.
So you got a lot of mixed up stuff there where people could meet and kind of extend their networks.
So, and your personal opinion, would it be fair to say that a yard back then was very important for many reasons? One, you do your burners, your collaborations, and you get to meet other riders. So it's kind of more of like socializing type thing.
It was definitely a place where you would connect with other riders. For me, people talk about riders' benches and stuff in New York. There was one spot near a bus bench on Ventura Boulevard near this KFC.
Okay.
Where like sometimes riders would kind of meet. But for the most part, for me, I met riders in yards.
Okay.
And then, you might get invited to a crew meeting or something or a party, and then you'd meet other riders. But it would always, those meetings usually started in the yards. And typically they were pretty cordial.
Okay.
On occasion.
Like, hey, what's up type thing?
Well, I mean, again, when you don't know the rules of graffiti, because you don't know any crews, you like do stuff that you shouldn't do and you learn the hard way, right?
What are some of those rules that you could kind of touch on and talk about?
Well, I'll tell you about my first experience at Woodman.
Okay.
So I went to Woodman, and I didn't know any graffiti artists at the time, really, that were actively painting. Okay. So I found a spot. I did this character. Yeah. I wrote next to it really big, "Someday I will be king." That doesn't go over too well. Okay. So, that didn't work out for me so well. I came back the next day, it's all dissed, everything's crossed out. And that was when I was still Ozone. Yeah. So like that, one of the rules, all right, well, don't make claims that you can't back up. Right? Yeah. Some other, you learn if you're going to go over to somebody, make sure you know who you're going over and that you're going to represent in a way that's not going to insult them, it's like there's all these unspoken rules. Yeah. You just sort of learn, you absorb them by watching. Okay. Like if you're at Belmont and guys are painting and all of a sudden one guy gets sort of approached and the next thing you know, he's getting hit with a pipe. You're like in your mind, you're like, all right, don't do that. Right? Yeah. So you start learning. Yeah. You just kind of learn and you just absorb it. It's almost like it's an unspoken thing. Yeah. But it exists because you have a very small and dedicated subculture. Definitely. Like you couldn't have that without this. It's almost like a cult, right? Yeah. So they have their beliefs. They don't necessarily talk about them, but they all share them. Yeah. And that's what graffiti was when it was this small subculture back then. For those that were tuned into the episode and don't understand what being king means, can you talk a little bit about your personal opinion of the definition king? Oh, I don't even think it's possible anymore. I mean, with the internet, like you could be king of Instagram. Doesn't make you king of the streets, right? I think back then it was about just getting recognition. I mean, I remember there was a quote, and I can't remember whose quote it was, but everybody that knows graffiti will remember the quote. It had to do with, it doesn't matter where you're from. It doesn't matter rich, poor, black, white. You could be king, right? Yeah. And so it just felt like an even playing ground. Okay. Where anybody could rise to this level where they got the support and respect and admiration of their peers. Okay. And I mean, nowadays it's like, oh, are you all city? Are you this? Are you that? Back then it wasn't so much of that. Okay. I mean, I would say there were a few writers in the 80s, in the mid 80s that were definitely up more than I was as a Ozone. Like guys that had been painting for years, guys from West Coast Art, guys from K2S, all these. But, being king to me just meant like getting that respect and like earning a position of, prominence in the graffiti hierarchy of Los Angeles. Definitely. Which I don't think I ever really did, but I tried. Hey. To each his own. I mean, it's definitely a very controversial subject. Well, back then I was really driven, you know, I mean, for the same reason I like skateboarding.
Yeah.
Like me, if I make that trick, it's all me. If I
Yeah.
blow it, it's all me. Graffiti was the same way. It's kind of really personal.
Yeah.
You know, and ultimately, you know, what you put on that wall is all about you. Like it's you're doing it. It's like nobody if it sucks, you can't blame your teammate.
Like, hey, my art came out right because it was your fault.
Right. You own it. And I've always really I don't know, I've lived my life that way. I like to own shit. Even if I'm wrong, even if I do it terribly, like at least I own it and admit to my, you know, sort of shortcomings. But I mean, you learn those rules on the street pretty quick.
Yeah.
In a place like Los Angeles, because if you don't, you end up with a black eye.
Yeah.
You end up with all your paint stolen.
Yeah.
You end up being disgraced. So, you know, you pay attention.
Gotcha. I know you, we talked about you traveling to San Diego to see your father.
Yes.
At any point, do you make any connection with any writer down there?
Not until I moved down there.
Okay. Can you talk about a little bit about the scene when you arrived? How was the scene down there in San Diego?
Yeah, totally. It was so cool because, you know, here I got to grow up in LA in the Valley where the scene just started. And I did that. And then in 1990, we had some deals go bad.
Okay.
And I left Los Angeles for fear of my life kind of thing.
Yeah.
So I left for San Diego. And at first I was like, I'm done with all this street shit. I'm going to school. I'm going to like, you know, I was more about like, how can I like make money so I can travel the world and enjoy my life and have all the things I want.
Yeah.
So I actually quit graffiti.
Okay.
In 1990.
Okay.
I was like, this sold out. There's too many writers now. You know, I'm over this. So I go down to San Diego and I don't write for 2 years, 2.5 years probably. And then I'm showing this girl some of my old pieces. This cafe I worked at.
Okay.
And that's the first writer I met in San Diego, a guy named Spot.
Spot.
Yeah. And he got pissed because he thought I was hitting on his girlfriend. So he challenged me to a battle. And I'm like, bro, I quit. I'm retired. Like, you know, that's like yesterday's news for me.
How does he do that? Does he come up to you and be like, hey, let's battle? Or what does he say?
He literally got in my face and was like yelling at me, like, let's battle. We got to battle. You know, you can't be talking to my girl. And I'm like, all right, I guess. Right. So we did. And he didn't even paint a piece.
What did he paint?
He saw me throw up my outline and he capitulated.
He's just like, I don't want to.
Yeah, he's like, didn't want any part of it. And after I painted that piece, I remembered how much I loved graffiti. Like I love just the process. You know, I've always thought of it as, it's almost like an interpretive dance.
Yeah.
Because graffiti's for the moment.
Definitely.
You know, you might run for a week or a month or a year, but really for you as an artist, you step to the wall, you do this incredible piece and you're done and you walk away and you leave it.
Yeah.
So like, it's really, and you might come back the next day to take flicks. It's gone already. Right?
Yeah, definitely.
So really it's really for that moment and it's for that experience and it's a whole body thing.
Yeah.
You know, when you're painting a big piece, you're doing big lines.
You're moving your whole body up and down.
It's like a dance. You're dancing with the wall.
Yeah.
And it's pretty amazing. So, I'm sorry.
We were talking about the battle with Spot.
Oh, yeah. So I stepped to the wall and I got that flow feeling again.
Yeah.
Right? And I mean, it's the same feeling you get when you're surfing, when you have to be all there. Like there's no past, there's no future. There's only that moment. And it felt really good.
And I know you surf as well.
Yes.
That passion for surfing come as a child or when you...
No, I think all of my passions come from the same thing, which is an addictive personality.
Okay.
And, you know, it wasn't until I discovered cocaine in my 30s that I realized that it was an addictive personality.
Yeah.
But I'd always been addicted to things that were actually relatively healthy.
Can you get a little bit into like, how is it catching a wave? Because I never caught a wave on a surfboard. So what is that? What is that feeling like?
It's one of those things. Like I could describe it to you. I could like draw charts and graphs, and I could never really explain the feeling.
Yeah.
But the closest feeling that I can say you have is when you're, you know, painting an illegal piece or a tag in a place that's kind of sketchy and you're on that edge.
Yeah.
Like you feel like you're at any minute shit could go wrong.
But you're still right there doing it.
You're still right there doing it. That's kind of what surfing's about.
I got you.
Yeah. So yeah.
Did you ever take part of any battling back in LA or in your early stages in LA? Or in the Valley?
We did.
Okay.
We actually, the first battle we had, I want to say it was in 1989 or 1990. It was right before the Hex Slick battle.
Okay.
The first one. And we battled UTI.
Oh, 2CF?
Yeah, TCF battled UTI. We battled at Belmont.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, yeah. And there are pictures of that battle somewhere. I don't have them. But we painted, our crew painted on the left wall.
Yeah.
And UTI painted on the main wall.
Yeah. And was there any rules in there?
There were no rules.
Okay.
There were no rules. And it was mostly a friendly battle. I mean, I think according to Rage, who is one of the founders of TCF, he said that basically Swan was in TCF, but left TCF to go to UTI.
Oh, okay.
And it made him really upset. So he insisted that we battle them. Yeah, it was one of those things, you know.
But it was friendly though.
Yeah, there was no beef. I mean, I think there was, again, you know, there were edgy moments back then, but at least for me personally, I didn't have any really big blowouts other than one of the first times I met Pure, but we resolved that.
So what did TCF throw up on the wall?
I don't even remember. Like Boo, who was one of my partners from way back, he used to write Merc. He told me I painted a giant caveman character.
Yeah.
I have no recollection. I don't even like to paint characters. It's not I like lettering. So I know that Rise did most of the outlines for that. And I know that Fever painted and Look, Mystic.
Okay.
And also Boo. We had a few guys paint from our crew. But, you know, I remember UTI painted, but I feel like Skill painted most of the pieces.
Who came out from UTI aside of him?
I don't even remember. You'd have to talk to Skill.
Do you remember who won?
Well, you know, I mean, it's up for debate, I guess. I mean, I don't even think. I mean, looking back, it didn't matter who won. We were all out there painting.
It was just the experience.
It was a great experience, and like, you know, I respect all those guys so much from UTI. I mean, you know, they were definitely one of those crews that like brought the Valley into existence. They made it matter.
Are they from the Valley?
As far as I know, they're from like the east side of the Valley. You know?
Okay.
But yeah, they were some of the first real prolific taggers I would see in the Valley, like UTI, MTA as well. So I don't know if that's where they were born, but certainly they had a major impact on the San Fernando Valley.
On my personal opinion, I can only speak for myself. I feel like battling is healthy as far as graffiti battles, friendly battles, just to, you know, push yourself to the limits.
Right.
And get yourself to the higher level and keep pushing yourself to get better and be great.
I agree.
2024, do you feel like it's still healthy to have battling?
I would like to believe so. I mean, again, I think graffiti's changed so much.
Yeah.
I think one of the biggest changes that sort of changes what battling even means. Changes what the whole art form means, really. Yeah. You know, back in the late 80s, early 90s, everything was very geo-specific.
Okay.
Like, for example, this basically captures the idea really easily. So the first time I met Zane from West Coast, you know, he lives out in Escondido.
Okay.
He gave me his card.
Okay.
And on his card, hand-printed silkscreen card, was his pager number. And his pager number didn't even have the zip code or the area code on it.
Yeah.
Because no, you would never meet somebody from outside your area code. It was so rare that you didn't even need to put the area code on your phone number. And because of that, graffiti kind of evolved, even in a place like LA, it evolved separately in different geospecific areas. And like, you know, I mean, you can see it most readily, the styles that were evolving in East LA versus West Side, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it all kind of, so they had these like evolutions that were parallel, but separate.
And there's also word of mouth back then. It's not like you could just hop on some type of website and be like, hey, come check me out.
No, of course not. I mean, literally, you know, I have letters from when we were exchanging photos with guys in Philadelphia or guys in New York. Like, I mean, you had to use the snail mail. You were sending hard prints, you know? And then, so when I did move to San Diego, sort of getting back to that, and like I met that first writer, I jumped into the San Diego scene and I realized like, it was like 6 or 7 years behind LA. So here I was back in a scene at its beginning again.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, not to say there weren't guys writing before I got there. There definitely were crews. I mean, but it was like earlier in the evolution. LA was, farther advanced. So I got to experience that like initial growth 2 times.
San Diego has a beautiful beach, just to put that out there. I like going over.
It does have beautiful beaches. I live in La Jolla too, so I'm right there.
Okay, you're not that far.
No.
Were magazines ever something that impacted you, kind of like Can Control, Big Time, and stuff like that?
Absolutely.
How important were they to you?
They were important, not just for seeing other styles.
Yeah.
Because again, we were kind of limited to our areas, right?
Yeah.
But it was also really important because like I got in a lot of magazines. So I was always running to like the Tower Records where they would sell them, opening up the mag and looking for my pieces. And it was pretty cool. And I think, probably 92 to 96, 97.
Yeah.
Like the magazines were really important. There were some really great interviews. Some really great magazines came out of that era, not just Can Control, but there were many,
Is there any other magazines that you can mention that were not Can Control or Big Time that you can remember?
I mean, While You Were Sleeping, Herb.
Okay.
Like those magazines, they were all born in Los Angeles, I believe.
While You Were Sleeping and Herb?
Yeah.
And were these bite writers?
While You Were Sleeping is Roger Gaspin's first publication. I don't know how much he wrote himself. Okay. I don't know him that well, but I also know that like Herb, that guy wrote, the guy that started Herb, I think he wrote Mist.
Okay.
And he was a West Side writer. And so there were definitely connections between, hip hop, music, extreme sports, and graffiti.
Okay.
They kind of all sort of started swirling together.
And coming from a time, right, where you guys didn't have social media like today.
No.
And your personal opinion, do you think social media uplifted the graffiti culture, or do you think it was bad for the graffiti culture?
I think we don't know the outcome yet.
Okay.
I mean, I think in a lot of ways, anything that has a positive side also has some negative impacts. Right?
Yeah, definitely.
Again, when you see graffiti growing in these geographical specific locations and they evolve differently, you get more styles, you get more variation, you get more interesting ideas.
Yeah.
When everything is presented to you on your phone and you see styles from all over the world every day, it kind of like brings everything, it kind of mutes it all in a way.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I think graffiti's gotten to a point where, the level of painting is unbelievable. Not only do we have all the colors we need now and all the tools we need, but just the level of that artist that's getting international attention is so far beyond anything we could have imagined
in the early stages.
We were kids. Yeah. It's amazing. And it's incredible to see. It's like porn to me, I like eat that shit up. But at the same time, I think it can also serve as a deterrent. If you're a kid coming up, like if I saw some of that stuff when I was growing up, I never would have picked up a spray paint can. You kidding me? Like that's it's beyond my comprehension.
And you come from a lot of do-it-yourself, like inventing like an ink or a marker or
that was the time when we would make our markers and stuff. Yeah.
Did you ever in your mind, did you ever think it was a bit today where you got like Montana that has like, I don't know how many colors?
I never in a million years would have imagined that graffiti would achieve the level of institutionalization that brought it to a point where it could support spray paint brands and where it could support entire clothing. It's incredible. Remember when we started painting, like even through the early 90s, we were lucky to have 20 or 30 colors total.
Oh, wow.
Because you had Rust-Oleum and you had Krylon and then like you had American Accents or something, right? And that was it. And then you had like the cheap off brands, but they made black, red, and white.
Yeah.
So you didn't have any options. And now, just Montana black, you've got 100 different colors, right?
Definitely.
So, and remember, like you couldn't buy actuators. You couldn't buy the caps.
You have to go figure it out.
You have to go steal them off oven cleaners and everything else. I would spend a lot of time at the local Gemco just stealing caps off, oven cleaners and, oil sprays and just trying them out and see what worked.
Putting them on the can.
Yeah, that was, and the problem with that, caps were like, when you ran out, you were screwed.
Yeah.
Like you're drawing a piece, you're doing a piece, you have no cap left to outline with. Like, what are you going to do?
Were you in the LA area when caps were introduced to graffiti culture in LA?
No, I was already moved to San Diego.
But were they introduced to you guys down there?
No, they were introduced here, but you couldn't buy them. You just had to steal them off, testers' cans or oven cleaners or whatnot. So like every cap, when it would clog, like you would get that single tear running down your face because you only had 6 of them, man.
And you're done.
And you're done. And no matter how much you wanted to paint, if you didn't have caps, you're not painting, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Krylon and Rust-Oleum back then being 2 of the most dominant spray cans available for writers. Which one did you prefer more, the Krylon or Rust-Oleum, and why?
I almost exclusively used Krylon.
Okay.
I don't really know the reason for that.
Yeah.
I think it was just in my mind, like, oh, if you're a graffiti artist, you use Krylon.
Yeah.
I know Rusto was popular too, but for some reason I came from that school of thought.
Okay.
I think part of it had to do with the fact that Krylon had already discontinued a number of colors.
Oh,
I had bought a bunch of them.
Yeah.
So like some of my friends that were more connected with the scene were coveting some of those colors, like the raspberry and the icy grape. And and so I think that the nostalgia almost of these colors that were no longer in production married me to Krylon.
Gotcha.
I don't even think it was the best paint. I mean, if you've ever used cherry red, there's better paint than Krylon. I mean, come on. But, and then a lot of the colors that people didn't like back then became the colors that everybody coveted many years later, like Chippewa and jungle green. Nobody wanted to use those colors. It was the 80s, bro. We're using pink and blue, so I think, losing colors for some reason became like, oh, well, maybe they're going to release new ones. Like you get excited.
But it's also kind of like, oh, come on, man. I needed that color.
Yeah, there was some of that too. But when you have a limited palette, the good part about that is you focus more on the letters. You focus more on the structure. Yeah. Because you're not like, oh, I have 600 colors. And, you actually have limitations. So you thought about that a little.
Like, how can I put this green with that orange and this yellow? And that's all I have.
Totally.
And you got to start color scheming.
Exactly.
I wanted to hop into your name, Nyse, right? Is there a meaning behind that, or was it just a thought?
So there is definitely a meaning behind it.
Okay.
So when you walk in your yard, see somebody paint a piece. Yeah. Maybe you know who they are. Maybe you don't know them. Maybe usually the first word out of your mouth, because it's graffiti. Yeah. You don't want to give them like big props. You don't want to diss them. You just say nice. So as it turns out, they might be looking at your painting, but they're saying my name. Yeah. And that made a lot of sense to me. The second thing that made sense to me was like, I was like, when I had to change my name from Ozone because I got, in trouble, I was like, all right, well, what am I going to change it to? And again, I was back in New York visiting my grandma and all over the place, NYSE, right? Mm. New York Stock Exchange. And, I'm kind of hip hop. I'm growing up in that culture. My stocks are always rising. Homie, what's up? So I'm like, I'm going to go with that name. So, I like, NYSE. Those are great letters. So that was the other thing. And I knew there was a nicer in New York. So I wasn't going to be like NICE. So, So
you changed it around.
Yeah, I changed it around. And I had a meeting for Ozone too when I told the paper about it to sound really dramatic, I was like, Ozone. I picked the name Ozone because every time I spray, the chlorofluorocarbons are destroying the ozone layer, just like I'm destroying myself. It was like really dramatic.
Yeah. Very passionate.
Like, they were eating it up. They're like, oh, that's great, right?
And I know you mentioned that you changed the name Ozone to Nyse because of some problems, right? Yeah. Or were those problems kind of like getting caught for painting? Yeah. Can you talk a little bit about that and how that experience was?
Yeah, it was. Back in the early 80s, I probably got picked up by the cops 4 or 5 times. They would call your mom. We were kids, right? Yeah. But as it started becoming more of a problem, and, they created like the Buff Squad in the West Valley. Yeah. They were really going after graffiti artists. Okay. And in that part of the valley, I was the most up. Yeah. At the time. And they wanted to make an example out of me, right? So.
As far as the valley?
Yeah. Well, they wanted to find me, arrest me, and send me to jail, basically. Okay. So I knew this because when I would have friends that got busted, 86, 87, 80, like, they would all come back from the police station and be like, man, they're after you. They've got 6 folders of your tags. And they're offering get out of jail free cards. And they're offering like tickets to Dodgers game if we give you up. Like they wanted to arrest me.
They wanted you that bad.
Yeah, and that's when I knew it was only a matter of time, right?
Yeah.
I'm like, somebody's eventually going to give me up, or there's going to be a witness, whatever.
Someone's going to want them Dodger tickets. And
so I was actually set to do this interview for this, there's this comedy group that performs in Westlake Village.
Okay.
I think it was called the Left Fielders. And my mom had got me a job painting a graffiti background for their show.
Yeah.
So they were doing like a story and the positive graffiti, right? They didn't know I was Ozone at the time. But this is a few weeks before I did get arrested. And so, the staff writer from the LA Times came to the house and was like, oh, tell me about the mural you drew for them. And instead, my mom didn't know this either, but I came clean with the fact that I was Ozone.
You told the interviewer?
I told the interviewer, I go, I'm done. I preempted. I knew I was going to get arrested.
Yeah.
So I was like, how can I soften this blow? And I was like, oh, I'm reformed.
Yeah.
That's what I'm going to do. I'm reformed. I mean, and I took it serious. So it started with that article.
Okay.
And then I was speaking at some of the high schools about the evils of graffiti.
Yeah.
Even though in the audience were guys I painted with the night before under a different name.
Yeah.
And so, I even this graffiti removal company from Australia sponsored me. And I was
graffiti removal?
Yeah. And I was like, and so by the time they finally went to arrest me,
you already had the nice
I
picture.
had the story. The story was on lock. Yeah. And so they came to Taft High School, where I went to school, to arrest me. And they made a big show out of it. Police car, like many police cars. And of course, I wasn't in school. I was painting. So, I ditched. So then eventually they got me in my house. They arrested me. And I mean, at this point, they knew I was Ozone. I admitted it's in the paper, right? So they arrested me and said, we have, several witnesses came forward. They recognized you. And, we're going to send you up the river, basically.
Oh, wow.
And so their goal, I was 17 and a half when they arrested me. And they told me they wanted to send me to California Youth Authority for 3 years.
Yeah.
But then they even talked about trying to charge me as an adult because they wanted to show the public that they were serious about graffiti. And they also wanted to deter other graffiti artists.
Did they have a number for the amount of damages set?
Dude, so they knew I was Ozone, right? Yeah. So we literally drove around for 2 days. And we would drive, and they had their book with address. Did you do that? Did you do that? And I'm like, yep. I fessed to over 1,000 tags.
Yeah.
And then some of them that I didn't really like the style that much, I'd be like, no, that wasn't me. But I mean, I gave them everything about me. Because really, I figured there were only 2 ways to get out of going to jail.
Okay.
One was to snitch on a bunch of people.
Yeah.
And we know that's not a rule you break.
Yeah.
And the other one was somehow strategically work my way through this and get out of it.
Yeah.
So by the time I finally was looking at court, they wanted to give me 3 felonies. It was down from 16 felonies to 3. But
you're still a minor at the time.
Well, yeah. But I mean, they did want me to spend time in jail. They didn't just want to give me community service. But, my attorney was like, oh, look at all, he's organized this graffiti cleanup and he's sponsored by this graffiti company and he speaks at high schools. And so by the time it all came down, their whole goal to make an example out of me fizzled.
Oh, wow.
Because they couldn't do it.
They fumbled.
Yeah, they totally fumbled. And I got a few hundred hours of community service.
Yeah.
And I went twice. And then the second time they wanted me to buff some pieces, and I told them I couldn't do it.
Yeah.
And then the guy just signed me off and I never went back. So all of that amounted to 16 hours of community service. And the only graffiti I ever actually buffed was my own tags. So I didn't cross that line either, right? Yeah. So it all worked out, man.
So your strategy was very powerful.
It worked out, and I used a similar strategy later in San Diego when I got arrested too.
Oh, San Diego happened again.
Yeah, in that case, I got arrested for piecing under this train bridge in Del Mar. And I did this. I did a spell out of the chosen few, and then next to it another spell out, the chosen. It was 100 yards long, and right when I was finishing, the sheriff's got me. So I went to the sheriff's office and, they gave me the court case and I went straight to the paper. Same strategy again. Said, graffiti, it says malicious intent to deface or destroy. There's nothing malicious about this. I was doing art. I was covering like garbage graffiti.
Yeah.
You know, so they did an article in the North County Times on me.
And that helped as well to...
Well, so they did the article and the court case is coming and I'm thinking, how am I going to get out of this? What am I going to do?
How old are you at this time?
22.
Oh, you're already...
No, 24, 24, 25. So I'm like, how am I going to get out of this? And so I went back to that yard and they had buffed my piece, right?
Yeah.
And in its place, there were ugly throw-ups and stuff. And so I started thinking and I'm like, I got this, dude. So about 2 a.m, can of red spray paint in Del Mar, drawing swastikas.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm Jewish, you know, I'm drawing swastikas. I'm going like right back to Mexico with arrows, like heinous, terrible stuff, right?
Yeah.
And I take pictures of it. When I go to court a week later, I tell the judge, here's what I painted. And I had my piece all connected, you know.
Yeah.
You would have hard copies connected and I framed it.
Yeah.
And the judge's like, wow, that's pretty cool. And I go, yeah, here's what I painted over. And I show these pictures of these swastikas and stuff. And I'm like, if you guys could find a jury that's going to convict me of graffiti for painting over this, let's go. And they dropped the whole chart. They dropped the whole
over that?
Yep.
Oh, wow.
Because they couldn't, I mean, seriously, I told them I painted over like this heinous, racist. And the great part about it was the penalty was this. I had 30 days because he asked me, he's all, well, what's on the wall right now? I go, just random graffiti, like, you know, tags and stuff. He's all, you have 30 days. You have to paint that wall. You have to buff it, take pictures, bring it back to the court, and we'll drop the case, right? So, of course, you know, I'm 25. I had 30 days. Day 29, I'm like, oh, I got to get down here and buff this wall. And I'm going down there, and a church group had just buffed it.
No way.
Yeah. So I'm like, click, click, click. Done. So again, I got off with nothing. So after that, So I pressed my luck a bit after that, but I never got caught again, I think. So
nice.
That's good.
I wanted to jump into a subject before we get on out of here. So you're TCF, right?
Yes.
At what point does MSK come into your life?
Well, MSK came into our life. Baba and Eclipse started MSK.
Yeah.
And I think that was probably in the early 90s, maybe during that time when I was no longer painting, right?
Yeah.
But I had gotten into AWR in 1988.
So you were AWR prior to MSK?
Yeah. Casey put me down in AWR.
Okay.
And then when MSK came along, it came along and sort of, Bob had told me the craziest story about the name and all this. I don't know if he explained it on your podcast, but it's pretty cool.
Shout out Baba, by the way.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely. So MSK became like the feeder crew for AWR, right?
Okay.
It's like the little brother crew, the junior varsity, call it whatever you were. And as you know, it's become way more than that now.
Yeah,
yeah. So at our last crew meeting, it was confirmed, like, you know, a lot of people took the liberty, well, if I'm in AWR, I'm going to write MSK too. I mean, it's all part of the same family. But at our last crew meeting that happened last year in LA, where we painted, Casey basically and GK and all the guys that run the crew are like, if you're an AWR, you're automatically an MSK.
So AWR was always the big brother.
Right.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. But I mean, again, I think the guys that first got in MSK, guys like Revoke, and they were so driven to like perform and to just do incredible shit.
Yeah.
That MSK became the bigger name.
Okay.
And became the name that like everybody knows, right?
Was it kind of awkward at a point? Like, I'm the big brother, but the little brother's getting all the shine.
I think for some of the crew members, maybe that were in the crew and very active at that time. I mean, I was in San Diego. Yeah. So they would come down, we would paint together and stuff. But I mean, I was kind of out of sight, out of mind. I've always been sort of this lone wolf.
Okay.
For a while, Bless lived down there, and Bless ran AWR, so we were tight. But, I mean, it was like, I think that maybe there was like some of this, it was like, wait, these guys are stealing our thunder. What's going on? But it's always been a friendly rivalry in the crew, and everybody is super supportive. And, I feel really lucky to be part of a crew that just, has so many strong artists in it and so many guys that to this day are willing to do shit that I just won't do anymore.
And is the 7 letters part of the same realm?
Yeah, the seventh letter is part of the same realm. I mean, I would say the seventh letter is sort of the commercial side of those crews.
Okay.
You know, and of course, Casey started all of that. So
seeing innovators, because in my personal opinion, people like Revoke and Saber are some innovators because they took graffiti to a very high level
clearly,
for what they were doing. How was it being the big brother, seeing the little brothers taking it to that level?
Honestly, I was really happy for them.
Okay.
I mean, I remember, I think it was like a B-Boy Summit in 1994.
Yeah.
I think it was 94, and I had a crew party at my house. And I remember meeting some of the younger guys. I mean, they're like at least 10 years younger than me, Revoke and Saber and those guys. And you could just see in their hand styles, you could see in their eyes, like these guys were committed to like take it to another level. They didn't have to talk about it. They were just going to do it. And the way they did it, the extent to which they did it, like was beyond all of my wildest, imagination.
Yeah.
To this day, like the first time I saw one of those, really memorable Saber pieces, or like one of Revoke's early pieces, like my mind was blown away. And I felt really proud that in one way or another, my work or the work of, my peers at that time inspired these guys to take it to that next level.
And you guys keep taking it to the next level because now you got people like Rams coming down from the buildings. And it's just the innovation. It just keeps getting bigger and bigger. And I'm just waiting for the next one.
I think, a lot of people think most things that can be done in graffiti have been done, but I'm always looking myself for other angles. The angles that Rams and those guys take, I mean, I can't even I don't think I would paint graffiti nowadays if I was a kid coming up.
Yeah.
I'd see that stuff and I'd be like, yeah, no.
I'm not doing that.
Yeah. I mean, to get to that level, it's like really amazing that they've taken it there. And I mean, I'm really proud of all those guys for stepping up and representing and, always taking graffiti to the next level. So I always try and do it my own way. And I can't do it like that. Cause like sometimes I could barely get out of bed. I'm all old, but just you doing graffiti differently. Like I'm doing, recently I did my first roller piece like about a year ago.
Yeah.
I mean, I never did rollers because when I was growing up, we didn't do that. Right.
Yeah.
And so in that case, it was an MSK AWR. And I thought, I wonder, what if I just change the colors all the time, seasonally? Don't change the piece, same piece, change the color. So I think I've gone through 10 color changes.
Oh, wow.
And it's kind of cool. I don't think anybody's ever really done that.
Just innovating and trying to be different.
Yeah, just kind of adding my own little conceptual component to my graffiti,
I got two questions for you before getting out of here, before we wrap it up. One, MSK and AWR becoming what they have become today, right? Being one of the most dominant crews out of LA, right? Have you ever been somewhere where you're like, oh, I'm MSK, and people are like, no way. Have you ever got that?
Yeah, that just actually happened in December.
Okay.
I was in Colombia. I was in Medellin.
Oh, wow.
And we were in Commune Trece, right?
Yeah.
And we were checking out the murals there. I was with my wife. And some guy just came up to me and, saw me admiring the writing. And like, he was clearly a writer. So I'm, oh, what'd you write? And, it was just some local kid.
Yeah.
But, when I told him I was from MSK, it was like, he thought I was a rock star or something.
How does that make you feel?
Well, I feel like I definitely put my time in.
Yeah.
I feel like I definitely earned my stripes. Again, I'm really proud of what my crew members in MSK have done to like build the name. And, I feel like finally at 52 years old, 53 years old, finally, I think I'm deserving of that kind of recognition.
Okay.
A little bit,
Definitely.
I mean, again, I'll never be Revoke, never be Saber, and I'll never be Rams. But
you'll always be nice.
Yeah, I'll always be nice. And I really feel like, it was the combined efforts of all of our crew from the very early days and in the mid to late 80s.
Okay.
When Eclipse was just setting up with guys like Reed and those guys all the way through it, like just kind of snowballed. And I'd like to think that we paved the way for some of the more successful writers in our crew.
Definitely.
And ultimately, I think that, there's only more to come.
Definitely. And I
So I'm
can't wait
excited to see what's next. I mean, it's like every day I open up Instagram and it's like Christmas. I'm like, what's the latest crazy shit people are doing? Yeah.
Last question I have for you before we get out of here, brother. For years to come, decades to come, what do you want the world to remember Nyse for?
Ah, geez. That's a loaded question. But I think ultimately, just that I really made a good effort to do what I could do and to like add to the culture and to like tell my story.
Yeah.
And to support the people around me that want to do the same thing. I mean, my goal in life right now, I mean, I'm 53, I'm retired.
Yeah.
I'm trying to set up a 501(c) right now that will create an endowment for the arts.
Okay.
And it'll be specifically accessible by kids growing up in the city, not necessarily LA, but in the city that, you know, might run afoul with the law because of graffiti.
Yeah.
Because, you know, graffiti has made everything in my life possible.
Okay.
You know, I took all that energy and all that knowledge and I applied it to commercial arts. I applied it to this, that, I applied it to business, all of it, and it all makes sense and it made me successful. So I want to be able to give people sort of a launch pad for that.
Awesome. Thank you for that.
My goal would be like, so an endowment that would supply like 5 or 6, you know, people with the money and means they needed to like pursue their dreams as artists in the world. You know, I can't
wait to see you make that happen. And I want to also take the time to thank you for coming down here and give me a little bit of your time. It was a pleasure to have you here. And it's a pleasure to finally meet you in person.
Yeah, really nice to meet you too, man. And thanks for having me.
And is there any shout outs you want to give out before we get on out of here?
I just want to give a shout out to my wife for not divorcing me over graffiti. I really appreciate that. And I also want to give out a shout out to Eclipse and the rest of the crew. You know, I mean, you guys inspire me every day to keep painting and to, you know, continue to innovate. So thank you.
You heard from the man himself. Make sure to like and subscribe. Don't forget to visit gotnocontrol.com and check out our merchandise. Get yourself a hoodie, a sweater, and so much